Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Duncan Bhaskaran Brown, coming from the UK. And I'm really excited about today's guest because he's going to talk to us about entrepreneurship. He's going to talk about his journey. And you can see in the book in the books in the background, Get Over Indulgence and also Real Men Quit, which we'll talk about. And I'm really happy to welcome him to the show. So Duncan, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to getting into some of the good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I see you're a Morris dancer, which we'll talk about later. But start off by briefly talking about yourself, how you got there, and how the audience can benefit from your expertise.
So I started off by, drinking like a lot of people did. I started off drinking when I was a teenager, and I thought it was a lot of fun. It was all very social. It all seemed to be, well, do you know what? It seemed to be kind of magic, didn't it? It seemed to fill in certain holes in my personality. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is great. But as the years went on, the amount that I drank went up, but the amount of people that I was drinking with went down. And in the end, I was basically sat on my own drinking 2 bottles of wine a night, which is not that much fun. So I found a way to stop drinking, turn my life around. Absolutely, love sobriety. I love all of the gifts that it has given me: the peace, the tranquility, the focus, the energy, the sort of sense of purpose, all of that good stuff. And that is, in essence, what I want to share with people. Whether I do that working one-to-one, group programs, speaking, facilitating, or through my writing.
Yeah, yeah, that's very fascinating. And the more I talk about, because there's addictions, there's talking about there's junk food, there's pornography, drugs, TV, internet, there's so many, there's gambling.
Well, up until when you said gambling, I was going to go, yeah, done all of those.
Yeah, and what else is there? There's just, I mean, any form. So one thing I was interesting is this idea of addiction. And so what are origins of addiction? I study successful people, and sometimes it's like it's an emotional trauma, like their parents left them, or like they're bullied, or their spouse cheated or something. So what spurs addictions? Which you talk about is how to get over indulgence.
Yeah, so I think you've hit on a couple of fairly good points. And one of the things that our research points to is that there are three kind of things that tend to draw people into problematic behavior, certainly around alcohol. That's where we kind of focus our effort. But yes, absolutely, there's that childhood trauma piece. That's a massive part of it. And that is at the heart of a lot of people's problematic behaviors, certainly around alcohol, but also around drugs and eating, and all of those more procedural kind of things that you mentioned, like social media, television, pornography, gambling. There's also another group of people, certainly around drinking, where they kind of they were drinking like everybody else up until something happened in their adult life. So that could be, as you mentioned, their partner leaving them, but it could be the loss of a job or a business. It could be a serious accident, an impairment in that sort of sense. It could be any of those kind of traumas that happen to us as adults, and that's what kind of pushes them over the edge and turns their what they would call normal consumption into sort of problematic consumption. And then there's another group of people who are a bit more like me, who maybe had a little bit of social anxiety when they were younger, but definitely wouldn't describe their childhood as being traumatic, but used alcohol to cement social friendships, or sometimes even it comes from a business point of view. Certain industries, there's a lot of drinking, and people join certain industries and they just end up drinking a lot, and one day they look up and all of a sudden it's a problem. Those are the three main kind of origin stories that you hear: childhood trauma, trauma that happens to you as in an adult and in an adult life, and then that kind of belonging, fitting in, social anxiety piece as well.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. One thing that I've that's come upon me is this idea, because sometimes addictions can actually be very productive. For example, workaholism, like you're addicted to work, and that can, drive you to be very extremely successful. Athletes, CEOs, entrepreneurs. So is this are addictions, because you kind of alluded to it, it's kind of because there's either running away from, could be like fear, or it could be like guilt, shame, and there's actually running towards, like your addictions are helping you run towards. So kind of talk about which type of addictions are running away. Are the majority of addictions running away from, or are you actually seeking something? Like, for example, we gave the example of workaholism.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's elements of running away from stuff in workaholism. That's the idea that you're just chucking yourself into work so much that you don't actually have to face what your life is really like. You don't have to confront those demons from your past. And I think that's, I guess, one of the real ironies of society, that if you look at a lot of famous people and you read their bios and you read between the lines and you listen to how other people describe them, it's clear that they've had a difficult childhood, and their way of kind of coping with that unprocessed trauma is by just throwing themselves into work, and they have become incredibly successful, and our society lionizes them and sticks them on a pedestal and calls them brilliant. Yet you take that same sort of childhood and you take that same kind of psychological process and you channel it into opioids, and people have a very different opinion of you, don't they? But it's the same broken people. And I think we need a lot more sympathy and compassion for people who find themselves in that situation, rather than like living in this kind of ridiculous idea that somehow working 18-hour days is a healthy and sustainable thing to do. We need to say to people, look, are you all right? Do you need some help with that? Because all right, you may become a billionaire, but what's better, to become psychologically stable and healthy and able to form long-term meaningful relationships, or to I don't know, buy a social media platform and send yourself into space? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because we'll talk about, because ultimately it's healing broken people. And one thing that I've realized is that just one is like, the more perfect your life seems, the more demons there are. So it's like you see like these people with these Instagram picture perfect lives, and like deep down they're battling an addiction, or again their spouse is cheating on them, or they're gambling, or they're in hiding something, skeletons. So question about, for you is that ultimately it's about healing and healing broken people. I know you speak a lot on the topic, so talk about your thoughts and ideas on healing and how to get whole again.
Yeah, no, I honestly will, but I think that's such a great idea, isn't it? Like, the more perfect your Instagram feed is, probably the more problems you have. That's almost like a diagnostic criteria. Anyway, stick that in the DSM. Yes. So actually, how do you go about helping people? So I do something that it would be classed as cognitive realignment or cognitive reframing, which some of your listeners might even have heard of. It's a form of cognitive behavioral therapy. I bring in a lot of other stuff. I bring in a lot of coaching and motivational interviewing and things like that. But at its heart, the idea is that we start off by getting to grips with your beliefs. Most people behave in a certain way because they believe certain things. So as it happens, we've had a general election in the UK here today, and I went to vote. I was actually the third person through the door in the polling station. And you got to think, well, why is Duncan like that? And it's because I believe in democracy. I believe very wholeheartedly that it's not a perfect system, but it's the best one we've ever come up with. And I also believe to make it work, we have to participate in it, and that actually underpins a lot of my actions, more than simply voting, I annoy people by shoving leaflets through their door around about election time. So I've been doing quite a lot of that of late. But, that is some very obvious behaviors which are clearly dictated by my beliefs. And a lot of the same is true around alcohol, for example. People have a lot of beliefs about alcohol. They believe that it helps them to socialize, or in fact that it would be impossible to socialize with alcohol. Some people believe it makes them tough. Some people may believe it makes them look glamorous. But we all and stress, yeah, that is a huge one, isn't it? A lot of people believe that alcohol helps them to deal with their stress, despite the fact that it actually increases your cortisol levels. So every unit of alcohol you drink increases your cortisol levels by 3%. And I'm sure I don't need to explain to your listeners that that's the stress hormone. So it's doing the exact opposite of relieving your stress. But we kind of get to grips with these beliefs. And what I like to do with people is help them to bring them to life, because they've never really thought about them. They've never really examined them. So we talk it through. Basically, we ask a couple of really key questions. Firstly, is it true? Does it really reduce your stress, or is it actually causing quite a lot of stress in your life? And then, we take it a little bit further and just sort of ask, well, actually, is it helping you become the kind of person you want to be? Because I certainly, with my drinking, it was doing the exact opposite. It was making me much further from the person that I really wanted to be. So once you've got to grips with all of those beliefs and, you've challenged them a little bit and thrown away the ones that aren't working for you anymore, I think most of the work is done. I do some stuff around thought management. A lot of people would call them cravings, but I'm not convinced. Cravings, they happen in your brain, ergo they are a cognitive thing, ergo they are just a thought. So we do some work around thought management, a couple of techniques, a few tips and tactics and things like that. And what I find is that the vast majority of people with the vast majority of behaviors, once they've dealt with the beliefs and they've got this kind of thoughts under control, then the actions follow. It actually becomes easy to behave in the way that they want to. The problem that I find is most people kind of do it the other way around. They try and change the action and they hope that the thoughts and the beliefs are going to catch up. But often they don't.
Yeah. I love that answer. And, that also brings me to the next thought and idea, is this idea of, we talked about, alcohol, drugs, sex, work, money, all these things. And what's interesting is when you say focus, peace, and happiness, are you saying, live a very simplistic, Spartan, minimalistic lifestyle? Because, my friends and I were joking the other day. They're like, yeah, because I'm naturally, I don't, I very, very simple. And then they're like, yeah, but when you die, it's gonna, your wife and the government and, your kids are gonna get everything and you didn't enjoy it. So talk about how to get over indulgence. Like, is it okay to, like your thoughts on social drinking, or, it's occasion, go out to eat, and talk about, how to get over indulgence.
So I think, you've hit on a really, really key point. I am not a monk. I do not live in a cell and eat nothing but gruel and stale bread. I think that's something that we really need to rebalance, isn't it? I don't mind indulgence. I don't like overindulgence. And I think we've got really confused about the difference between the two. And I think you can kind of sum it up with birthday cake. Now, I'm sure you're an incredibly popular chap, Christopher, so I'm sure you've got an awful lot of friends. But if you really get down to it, how many of them are going to invite you to their birthday party every year? Sound like a seventh grader there, haven't I? Anyway, like if you actually get down to it, how many close friends do you have? Let's say you've got 12, right? Which means you should be going to a birthday party about once a month, which means you should be eating birthday cake about once a month. And there's nothing wrong with eating birthday cake once a month. That is not going to kill you, is it? However, in society, we don't even wait for birthdays to eat cake. You can effectively go and buy birthday cake every day of the year. In fact, you can go and buy birthday cake ice cream and eat it in front of Netflix on a Tuesday, and nobody even kind of bats an eyelid about it. And it's like, look, by all means, when you are celebrating, indulge, relax, have something that you like the taste of. It's just you've got to realize there aren't actually that many decent excuses to celebrate. And just because it's Friday, it's not a reason to celebrate, just because there's some football on the TV. I mean, if you take football in broadest definition of the word and include soccer and rugby football and Aussie rules football and Gaelic football, but I mean, there's football on every day of the year. It's not a good excuse to drink beer. So I think, it's about rebalancing that relationship with celebration. And actually, I think there's a lot more joy in it. I think if you do it that way, if you make it something special, if you're more mindful about it, you're more aware of it, you savor it and you actually enjoy it, then you drastically increase the pleasure that you take from it. You completely remove almost all of the risk that it's going to cause in terms of your health and your well-being, but also you remove a lot of its immediate negative effects. And that's absolutely true of alcohol. I mean, I can bore you to tears with the science of that, but basically the enjoyment comes from the first drink. You just chase that for the rest of the evening, and then you end up feeling bad in the morning. If you just have that first drink, you get a lot more pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you're talking about is moderation. One thing, kind of we have around 5 to 7 minutes remaining, and what is this when you talk about why it's sad that stopping drinking is the one area in life that isn't dominated by men? I'm curious what that means.
Yeah, so I mean, we do get everywhere, don't we, guys? We like to muscle in and make our opinions heard, but sadly, we are a bit quiet in the recovery world. If you go on Instagram or any of the social medias, what you'll find is that the most vocal, most successful people talking about recovery and talking about sobriety are all women, and they're doing some amazing work, and I've got an awful lot of respect for them and I've got a lot of time for them. But the bare fact is that for every 4 drinks that are sold worldwide, 3 of them are drunk by a man and 1 of them is drunk by a woman. So we are drinking far more than women, and unsurprisingly, we end up with more problems. I mean, you are approximately 3 times more likely to develop a problem with alcohol if you're male than if you're female. So we have more of a problem. But of course, being blokes, we're not so good at asking for help, are we? So we're not talking about it, and we're not actively working together to help each other, and we're not asking for help. So it's all generally a bit of a mess. And, I just try and do my part. And that was really the reason why I wrote Real Men Quit, was because I wanted to, real low bar stuff. All you need to be able to do is type real men and quit. Those are really easy to spell words, by the way. All you need to do is type that into Amazon. Anyone can do it. It's like literally the easiest thing ever. And then you end up with something that's actually going to try and meet you where you are, because guys, we're simple creatures, really. We like sport, we like movies, we like bad jokes. So I just wrote a book about rebalancing your relationship with alcohol that includes a lot of sport, a lot of movies, and a lot of really bad jokes.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll talk about your books kind of at the end. And one thing that's really interesting is this is the idea of social conditioning and you know basically how the media, how society portrays alcohol. And you mentioned, how the gender differences. So kind of what are your thoughts in about that, the problem with that, is the portrayal accurate or inaccurate, and what to do about it?
So, yeah, I mean, there's a scene in Spectre, the one of the James Bond films, where the bartender says that he's drunk 6 martinis, and the earlier they explain how they make those particular James Bond martinis. So those have got like 6 units in them. So actually, according to the film script, Bond had drunk 24 units, which, is enough to kill some people. Now, that is a lot of alcohol. You should certainly be unconscious at that point, and he's not even slurring his words. So, is the portrayal of alcohol accurate? No, not really. I mean, another great example. There's quite a lot of drinking in Homeland. In the early series of Homeland, there's quite a lot of drinking, and there's quite a lot of like the morning after, and they all look amazing. And it's like, oh, but you got really, really drunk last night, according to the film script, but now you just look like you've walked out of a salon, kind of thing. And it's like, no, I mean, I don't think it is particularly fair. I think it's very biased. If you look at any time any sort of celebration is going to be portrayed in any film, it will always involve alcohol. In fact, we're in the middle of doing some research on a few Netflix things, Painkiller being one of them, which is, about the opioid crisis. Yet, interestingly, there's far more portrayal of people drinking alcohol than there is taking OxyContin. And it's like, that's kind of strange, isn't it? It's about this, but actually there's far more alcohol in it. And then there's a couple of others. Griselda is allegedly about cocaine, but there's a lot of drinking in it. There's also an awful lot of smoking in it, but I'm not ranting about tobacco at the moment. So yeah, I think, like, if you don't believe me, just turn on Netflix. Some research we did a couple of years ago, 86.5% of Netflix shows that we studied had alcohol in them. And typically it was, on average, it was within the first 10 minutes, which is like really the golden window for product placement. So I don't know, maybe I'm just a bit cynical. But yeah, I think there is a way that alcohol is always portrayed, and it's always very favorable. It's always linked to power. It's always linked to sophistication. It's always linked to attraction. It's never linked to, making you like gibbering idiot looking awful kind of thing, which is, of course, what it actually does.
Yeah. And that's how the advertising industry gets you, is it's basically these they link these emotional positive emotional attributes to the actual physical drinking of, so it makes you, it's like putting a Rolex watch on a celebrity, kind of these types of so
I
interesting.
love the way Roger Federer would always sort of like very carefully and meticulously put his watch on after he'd finished the tennis match before he went and held up the thing so you could see the watch. And incidentally, Roger Federer is one of the few sports people who is regularly photographed drinking alcohol, because these days most sports stars just don't drink. I don't know why Roger Federer is regularly photoed with champagne in particular. I mean, it might be because it's an important part of his sporting like preparation ritual, or it might be because Moet and Chandon pay him an awful lot of money to be an ambassador. Again, maybe I'm just being a bit cynical.
Yeah. Talk about your book and how people can find it and follow you on social media, reach out to you.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, Real Men Quit, just type Real Men and Quit into Amazon. We're all over the world, so pretty easy to find that one. But if your listeners would like to have a look at my first book, Get Over Indulgence, I would love to offer them a free copy. So all they need to do is type getover.uk into their favored search engine, and that will take you to a bit of my website where you can download it either as a PDF or Kindle, or if you can stand listening to me for 3 hours and 45 minutes, you can download the audio version there as well. That's getover.uk. And like I say, it's a bit of my website, so you can find out a bit more about what we do. Links to all of the socials are on there as well. Pretty busy on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to connect, if you've got any questions, queries, or comments, I am always happy to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. And for all the audience, let's thank Duncan for coming on and talking about this addiction problem. And be sure to check out his book. You can download it free. These links will be in the links in the show notes. Give his socials a like and follow. And thanks so much